Hey gang, it's Wednesday. I am so excited because it's Humpday. Woo woo. I don't have Chad to go woo woo
or like jump in and go Humpday.
and JB has a new boom mic.
A new
Yes,
mic.
everyone, it is a brand new boom mic for
Please
JB.
comment on my high quality sound.
We can do this like NPR radio.
Yeah, or the Joe Rogan podcast.
See, seasons eatings. Anyway, everybody, welcome to Dennis in the Know. This is your
I
backstage.
can't stop thinking about it.
Good times, good times. Hey, everyone, this is Dennis in the Know. This is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It is live, as always. It is over a cocktail.
As always.
Yes, as always. And it is with my besties, or again this week, I have to say bestie, because our good friend Dr. Chad Duplantis is not with us. But you know who is? Dr. Jennifer Bell.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
Exactly. I'm glad we have some consistency here.
I know.
Anyway, we miss you. Chad, can't wait to have you back next week. Anyway, you all know the routine. We are all dentists, we are all educators, and we are all business owners. And our job is to bring all of you in the know. We have Mary Shields tonight, Dr. Mary Shields from Louisville, Kentucky. She is a cosmetic dentist and a forensic dentist, which for me is kind of exciting because I actually did my table clinics in my senior year on forensic dentistry. I studied with Dr. Ed Hershaft. Maybe she'll know who that is, maybe not. But he was a big forensic dentist at MUSC, and I even offered to go up to New York with him after 9/11. That was the first phone call that I made after 9/11 was to see if he needed my help. You know, as dumb as I was, I still had been trained by him, and maybe could have filed his papers or something, or learn more. Just, everybody just wanted to do whatever they could when that happened. So, but anyway, we're really excited to have Mary. You guys are going to love meeting her. She's so nice, and we're excited to talk to her. But before we bring her on, JB, do you have any news?
Always.
Cool.
So let's piggyback on what we were just talking about with managing your overhead. And just recently, the CDA, which is the California Dental Association, filed suit against Delta Dental of California for the specific reason, highlighting several things, but mostly their carte blanche decrease in fees. Although they would argue some saw an increase, many saw no change. Most specialists saw a decrease in reimbursement. So it really impacted almost 20 to 40% reimbursement reduction to endodontists, periodontists, and oral surgeons. And so there was a suit filed against Delta Dental. We'll see if this gets any traction, but it will be interesting to watch because obviously on the West Coast in particular, Delta Dental holds a pretty strong, we'll use the term monopoly, on the insured patients, where in most states on the West Coast, they represent somewhere between 90 and 92% of the patients seeking dental care that have dental insurance are Delta patients. So it is a big deal for this type of lawsuit to come forward. I just was speaking with a doctor out of California just this week who is struggling to find a balance between the type of care, quality care she wants to provide to her patients in biomimetic dentistry and remaining in network at the reimbursement rates being provided by Delta. So this will be an interesting discussion, as we saw in Massachusetts with the question 2 on their ballot. As goes one state, many will follow, no pun intended, suit behind them. So it'll be interesting to see if this will now become a bit of a snowball effect with some of the other states, particularly on the West Coast. Here in North Carolina, we have about 8 to 10 different insurance companies that are present. And so I think that has helped protect the providers a little bit from across the board fee reductions. But we are certainly watching this equally as close because we know we're as susceptible to that. So that just came out of California this week. Here's another interesting one that came up this week out of the federal government. The Federal Trade Commission has proposed some language against non-competes. Now, Jeff, when you brought in your associates, you offered them non-competes, correct, in their contracts?
Of course.
Right. Well, the FTC is looking to ban non-competes altogether for employees. And they claim that will increase revenue and wages by $300 billion because that many workers are unable to work or provide income because of non-compete clauses.
Okay, so this is why Chad always throws me down during this part, because I get revved up and I get really bothered by this kind of stuff. Is it me? I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but is it me, or is everyone trying to take out small business on every angle?
I know.
I mean, you've got to be able to protect yourself. I mean, why would anybody make someone privy to their most valuable information, which is the goodwill of their practice, the access to all of their computer systems and everything, and have that would be like saying that non-disclosure agreements are illegal. Like, you've got to be able to protect your most valuable assets as a business owner.
Well, we don't have, it would be much more difficult to protect intellectual property for what we do. I mean, large businesses are filing patents and protected trademarks, registered this, blah, 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 to protect their high level intellectual property. But as you stated, for most practices, sure, maybe we have a killer office manual that somebody could rip off of us or, something like that. But the majority of the income comes from our goodwill and our ability to manage our systems, our people, and our patients. And so anyway, open comment period is happening now for this particular entity or this particular piece of, I can't say legislation because it's never going to see the light of day as a bill. This will be something that the FTC likely has the full authority to make the decision on. So open comment period is happening. I'm hoping that it was mentioned in the ADA today. I think other organizations are starting to take note at what impact this might have for general dentists and all dentists practicing currently in the US. So we'll be watching this very closely. If this is something you're very passionate about, like Jeff is and like I am, perhaps review the open comment period options to see if there's a way that you can submit your comments. I will tell you this, federally, they are obligated to read every single one of them and consider that as part of the packet for the decision. Now, whether or not it actually has impact, I don't know, but they are required to read them. So you can lobby your dental organizations to participate in this discussion, which we're currently working with the AGD on that. But the ADA is also taking note, and I would imagine is trying to get a seat at the table as well.
Oof.
I know.
That one's scary, JB.
Okay, well, we've got one more scary and then a happy. So this week, well, actually, it was towards the latter part of the year in 2022, a dentist was sued, I believe he's out of Missouri, was sued by a laboratory company for his disparaging marks about Snap-on veneers and on his YouTube channel. So this company is seeking defamation damages against this dentist for speaking openly on his YouTube channel about his opinion for Snap-on veneers. So I don't necessarily have an opinion one way or the other about this. I think freedom of speech is really important. If you want to go and say whatever you want to say on the YouTube channel, fine. Comments are open for anyone to say that this is crap, because we certainly let a lot of people say dumb stuff on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube all the time, and nobody sues them. That being said, if this actually gets some kind of leg to it, where we as professionals are now going to be held to a different standard of what we can and can't talk about on the internet as far as direct-to-consumer products, this will be very interesting. I know a lot of dentists that currently make their living off of reviewing direct-to-consumer products through Instagram and YouTube. because it's open commentary. They're not providing professional advice. They're simply giving an opinion. So this is definitely something to watch, not just as a dentist, but also a consumer of social media content. If this is going to get if this has any legs to it at all.
Now, this one doesn't worry me as much because defamation and I mean, are they going to try? I don't see that going anywhere. That's a really hard thing to win in court.
Right.
I don't see that one ever even getting legs. I see that one going away. I think they're just making noise trying to scare the dentist away.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
We got.
By the way, this lab was out of Fort Worth, Texas, so maybe Chad knows them.
Yeah.
All right. The last story is a feel-good story. There was a dentist out of Buffalo. He works for the Indian Health Service, and he's no stranger to snow, as you might imagine, in Buffalo. And so he actually experienced several years ago a situation where it was a heavy snow and he was stuck in his house for a long period of time. And so since that has occurred, he's much more adequately prepared when these types of weather events come through. And around Christmas, they had you remember how cold it was during Christmas this particular year? And most of the U.S. experienced some amount of snow. We didn't get any here on the lower East Coast, but a good portion of the U.S. in the Northeast experienced a fair amount of snow. Well, this dentist was sitting at his house around Christmas time, got a knock on the door. Two gentlemen were asking if they could borrow some shovels to help dig out their automobile from the snow. Come to find out, it was 10 stranded South Korean tourists that were trying to make their way to Niagara Falls. Well, they were not, there had already been advisory warnings out about being out in the cold because it was probably below zero in Buffalo at that given time, and it was a whiteout. So he offered his home up, his food, his lodging, warmth, everything to these 10 stranded dentists, and they hunkered down in place for a few days until the conditions improved and they were able to return. And he just kind of leaned in and he said, what dentistry has taught me is not the technical skill, but how to relate to people using humor and compassion and empathy to sort of extend, an open arm to those in need. So to those 10 South Korean tourists and to that dentist, I say, job well done.
Huzzah.
And that's the news.
I love it. Well, thank you for ending on a positive note. I feel like we've been kind of doing this, over the last 20 minutes. So
I know.
Well, why don't we do this? Because I'm really excited about our guest tonight.
Same.
And would you do the honors of introducing her?
Yes, I would love to. So tonight we have with us a very interesting combination of skills. And in fact, we were kind of joking about it beforehand about what combination you could come up with for being both a cosmetic dentist, but also someone who has a specialty in forensics. Well, we're going to let her highlight those particular skills and how we believe she's not currently using them at the same time to sort of talk about her journey, her career, and hopefully a lot about forensic dentistry, which I think, unlike Jeff, the majority of us haven't had a lot of exposure to, and what role they play in the overall crime world, but also helping folks who are grieving and looking for lost loved ones to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle back together. So Dr. Shields is joining us this evening. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh,
welcome, Mary. Good to see you. Cheers.
Cheers. I have a
Cheers.
up call, so I'm having water, but I'll have a glass of Riesling tomorrow since I'm
there. You go.
Today. But yeah, thanks for having me. I love watching you all, and I love that it's on Humpday. And I think about when my son Stone was 2, and one of his best, what we would call party tricks for a toddler was, "Hey Stone, what does a cow say? Moo. What does a pig say? Oink. What does a dog say? Woof." But then we add in, "What does a camel say?" And we taught him to say, "Humpday."
I love it.
I love it.
when those
You
guys,
know, we used to use that Geico commercial intro at the beginning, and
We were worried about being sued.
yeah. Then we were like, that might be intellectual property we shouldn't be using.
yeah,
Right.
still stuck around for how many years later. So great marketing there. Well done.
That's right.
But yeah, so thanks for having me on this hump day. I appreciate it. We're going to talk a little bit about two things that people, dentists in particular, find interesting, which is forensic dentistry, of course, and then facial aesthetics as it relates to what us dentists can provide to our patients. So I think maybe if you guys don't mind, I'll tell you a little bit about forensic dentistry. And especially for any of those listeners that want to learn more about forensics and how maybe they can tiptoe in the waters and, maybe they have an interest in forensics, like a lot of us do, whether you're somebody that likes to watch true crime TV, like Forensic Files is a personal favorite of mine, or, others like to watch TV drama series like CSI and those things. So I love helping others explore their interests. And one of the things I love about dentistry in particular is we're afforded that opportunity to, branch out and see what we like, what we don't like, what we never want to do again, and then what we really want to dive into as part of our career. And I had a wonderful, like you, Jeff, I had a great mentor in dental school, and that's where the interest started. It was actually my oral pathology teacher. I don't know. Did you guys have good path teachers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Hershaft was oral pathology.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I bet he knows, I don't know him personally, but I guarantee he knows my mentor really well. He's an oral pathologist. He's been a forensic dentist since I've been as long as I've been alive. So in 1982, he became board certified, and we'll talk about that. There is a credentialing process for anyone interested in being a forensic dentist. There are less than 100 in the world, and it's a pretty rigorous board certification requirement series. So we'll talk about that and particularly where I am in that journey. But yeah, he was a great teacher. He did one lecture on forensic dentistry, and the content was interesting enough to where people would either say, I would never do that, or, oh, that's so cool, I would love to see a case. So I was on the I want to see a case part of that spectrum, and he took me with him on a case, and ever since then I thought this is something that I could see myself doing. And like you mentioned, Jennifer, it's a great service to families that, DNA, people say, why don't you just use DNA? And, that's the way to identify somebody. Well, yeah, it is, but it takes weeks, if not months, a result back, where a forensic dentist, most of the time, if I've got the ante-mortem or the before death records, they think they know who it might be. And then I do my post-mortem dental autopsy. I usually have an answer, whether it's confirmatory, which usually it is, or not confirmatory. I know that within about, I'd say, 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Of examining the evidence, because that's what we're so good at doing. And most of it's based on, just like in private practice, a dental examination and radiographs. So it's very straightforward. Anybody that has an interest in it should definitely explore it. There's not, I think some people say, like, what's the need? Is there a need for the service? And that's something that's so dependent on geography, and are there forensic dentists in your area already? And if the answer to that is yes, there probably isn't a real need. We talk about what roles in dentistry are needed right now, and I would say, of course, like, we need more hygienists in the applicant pool. We need more expanded duty dental assistants. We need, better office or more office support staff if they're, willing to learn more about dentistry. But if there's a need, then explore it. But so many people have been interested in it that it's, how much are you willing to give away of your daily normal, I'd say normal practice routine to kind of dive into this other specialty of dentistry. But if you guys don't mind, I just want to tell you, like, the 4 basic areas.
Would love that. Absolutely. Please go.
Okay, so the most common thing we're asked to do by either a coroner or medical examiner is a forensic identification. Jeff, like you were saying, when 9/11 happened, any dental evidence was good evidence, and trying to get the remains of those decedents back to their families as quickly as possible. Things like, you all saw the news recently about that airline crash. I think it took over 70 lives. Certainly that would be a mass disaster, but that would be an indication where a forensic dentist would be able to reunite the remains of the decedents with their family members for proper burial, and arrangements in that way. So I'd say if I had to put a number on it, I'd say more than 90% of my forensic work is identifying human remains. And some people might say, well, what types of cases are not identifiable? And I just tell them anywhere where the soft tissue has been either degraded, so like a decomposition case. So a lot of times in the fall, hunters go out and they stumble across human remains. At that point, they're, Jane and John Doe, and we're trying to figure out who they are. So skeletonized remains, burn cases are pretty common, unfortunately. And then other soft tissue damage that could be the result of like a mass disaster or something like that, where there's lots of soft tissue damage, and the inability for a loved one to identify their family member. So identification, like I said, more than 90% of what I do is identifying human remains. The next thing we do, and this is super controversial, we talk about things in the news that are, there's kind of a division between supporters and non-supporters, and that's bite mark evidence. There was a day when evidence was the almost like the silver bullet or like the fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know it's not true. Your bite mark and my bite mark probably, could look similar. There's no way to quantify, of the open population, how many people have a tooth position orientation like I do. It's impossible, but they were using terms like one of a kind or unique. And that's just, we know now that that's irresponsible in terms of an expert testimony. So the laws are changing. Even Texas, and I was going to talk to Chad about this, but Texas actually has a moratorium on bite mark evidence, so it's not even allowed in the court. And I think some states are considering that. But as of now, Kentucky, which is where I live and work, is not one of those states. So I still offer opinions on pattern injuries on both live victims and unfortunately decedents in some cases.
Mary, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No.
I mean, you bring up something that's making me think a little bit. So they would ban, I mean, there is a movement to ban all bite evidence, because I guess what I'm thinking is every arch form, will have its own unique measurements, canine to canine width, bicuspid to bicuspid. And when you start throwing in enough numbers, I would think statistically it would begin to make for a better case. I don't understand, like, why. That's like saying you can't have a footprint. It's just one piece of evidence. It's not the whole case. So I guess that's my concern with saying any of this evidence isn't allowed, because, if the measurement from this tooth to this tooth is X, and the measurement from this tooth to this tooth is X, and each individual tooth has a width measurement of X, and this spacing exists, I would just think each data point would begin to make it less likely for someone else to be a potential culprit.
Yeah, and we want to make it as scientific as possible. And in many cases, we're able to do that in cases where there's a closed population. So in fact, I'm dealing with a child abuse case now, offering an opinion on a bite mark on a child, and only 3 people had access. It's a child under the age of 1, and only 3 people had access to the child. So then we're not having to consider the entire population. We're having to consider 3 individuals, and
Right.
of individuals, so I'd like to argue. I like a good argument about there still is a place. It's not an exact science, and I'll talk to like you made a great point about the patterned analysis of something like a shoe print, and that still will be used in court. I'll tell you the difference. This human skin as a substrate is there's some elasticity, there's usually movement involved, as you can imagine. If you were being bit in a, you know, we'll say, you would be moving, you would be turning, you would be pulling, and so you're not getting an accurate impression, for a better word, or indentation of the pattern. Whereas something like a concrete floor where there's a shoe print, we know that that's not moving, and that is something measurable. But like I said, I still feel really strongly that there are some cases where bite mark evidence should still be considered. And we have, as a organization of forensic odontologists, we have, just like the ADA, you know, as dentists, we belong to the ADA. The American Board of Forensic Odontology has said, hey, let's get together, let's come up with new vernacular to say what would be a responsible way to categorize bite marks as it relates to pattern injuries. So what we've decided now, and this is what's agreed upon, is we can exclude potential biters, we can include potential biters, and we can say it's inconsistent, or it's like it's non-evidentiary. So we're not willing to say. And so that's what most cases turn into, is we say this bite mark, and we do a blinded comparison. So when I look at 3 bite mark, I'm looking at cast models. I don't know if they're male or female. I don't know if it's a foil or if it's you know, just some random person they shuffle in the group. So it's just like a dental lineup, just like in CSI, where they say, here's the lineup, who did you see commit the crime? Similar to that, but certainly we're blinded by it. So I still think there's a place for it, but it also is fairly under some scrutiny that is justified. So just kind of tread lightly and not reach outside of what is reasonable. And certainly there are nightmare stories about people being falsely imprisoned for crimes they didn't commit. And there's still, I mean, there's some science behind it. As we know, there's DNA in saliva, and it's really hard to deny if there's something that looks like a bite mark and a swab is done in the medical examiner's office, and that saliva is studied and it has DNA in it. I mean, certainly that's a case that can't be denied.
Right.
So in bite marks, which people love to talk about, Ted Bundy case, I think most recently on Netflix, I think there have been at least 3 series about Ted Bundy, and then certainly Jeff Dahmer, if anybody was gutsy enough to sit through that one.
I did. I watched that whole thing.
Yeah, I didn't know there was bite mark evidence with that case, but obviously there were.
So it's really interesting, you know, and I so appreciate you speaking to the point, because I really hadn't considered that about like the elasticity of the skin and what happens if if it's a tear motion or if there's movement during the bite. So that really makes sense. I guess I just don't understand the blanket dismissal of any type of evidence. I feel like all evidence should be entered on a case-by-case basis, and and discussed and decided upon, at least by the judge overseeing the case, and not to say none of this is allowed. I don't get that.
I 100% agree with you. And I think, sadly, bite marks are seen predominantly in 2 types of cases: child abuse cases and sexual violence cases. And I thought there was one meeting where someone from the Innocence Project, and they have a good mission. I understand the work they do, and they're just as passionate as other advocates for bite mark evidence are. But I just wanted to say, if you're, God forbid, if your daughter was the victim of sexual abuse and she had a very clear bite mark on her upper arm, let's say, are you telling me you would not want to dive into that closed population at that fraternity house and figure out who can be ruled in and who can be ruled out? Like, how could anybody deny that? So again, same thing with a child in daycare, let's say, and there's 4 daycare workers and it's clearly an adult bite mark, not a child's bite mark. Why would you not at least collect the evidence? Like you said, Jeff, let a judge. That's why these judges are in positions that they're in, because they know the law, they know process, they know due process, and we count on them to the just thing. So yeah, it's controversial, but every year, we learn a little bit more cases that help support both sides, and that's why we fall somewhere in the middle. So, and that along with that comes another thing that we do, and that's expert testimony. So we are called upon to sit as expert witnesses in a variety of cases, and it's part of our board requirement. So it's weird. Hope for a pose.
You okay, Jeff? Are we losing you?
Want some water?
No, I'm just getting excited. It's when we have, pilots and forensics and we start talking about the joint, I just get overly excited. That's all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so expert testimony. I've never hoped to be deposed or get a subpoena until probably the last year, and I'm just waiting for my chance to, share some of my knowledge with a particular case, and I will have that chance in next month. I'll be acting as an expert witness in a homicide case. I got very worried though, because it said we expect the trial to last 2 weeks, and I thought, I can't be gone from my practice for 2 weeks, but they said, no, Mary, you just have to be there 1 or 2 days. It's like, oh, okay. The other is age estimation. That's the fourth. I would say it's the most infrequent thing I'm asked to do. And that is if skeletal remains are found and they have no idea who they are. If there is a mixed dentition situation where I've had, 3 or 4 cases like that, where there is a combination of primary and secondary teeth, they ask the forensic dentist to give an estimate on that child's age at their time of death.
Well, what about ethnicity and race, which can very often be told? Are you ever called in to do that?
Yeah, so normally what they'll do is after the medical examiner does whatever autopsy they can do on dry bones or severely decomposed bodies, they'll have us come in, look at the dental, and then they will send that. You guys have heard of the body farm, right?
In Tennessee, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not too far from you. Yeah, Tennessee. The body farm is in Knoxville, but Knoxville also has a great anthropology department. And so what they'll do is they'll send everything to the anthropology department. And Jeff, just like you mentioned, they will have a full report on things like, they'll look at age too, but dental, to be honest, dental is better with age estimation.
Mm-hmm.
Suture closures and things like that. Certainly ethnicity, and then gender, of course, they need the pelvis for that. But I always try to include a little bit of that in my report, because there are some really, that the frontal bone, that brow bone, you've seen some men that have really distinct brow bones. The aperture, where the nasal spine meets the maxilla. There's some really neat things that I've learned over the years about skull morphology and anatomy. Took me back to head and neck anatomy, which was a long time ago, but it was fun to bust out Netter's Atlas. I don't know.
Don't you talk about a long time ago. Not in this house. Not in my house.
We won't talk about when Jeff graduated. GV Black was his valedictorian.
Oh, please stop it. You don't
So,
get to go there.
Mary, talk a little bit. So I'm sitting at home, I'm listening to this, and I'm like, I want to be the forensic dentist of my town because people are murdering people left and right, and I have a place. I want to do this. What's the journey?
Okay, so the first thing I would ask you to do is I would ask you to contact your medical examiner's office and ask to speak with somebody that deals with identifications of skeletonized remains. They may say, oh, we don't have anybody. We send that to UT Knoxville, and we get the results back a month from when we submit them. That would be like an ideal situation where you said, you know what, I can help, and I can help in a matter of a few hours instead of weeks. So that's what I tell people. And a lot of people say they're interested, and I'm happy. You know, there's no competition. It's so regional that, I mean, unless you live in Louisville, Kentucky, don't come in my area. No, I'm just kidding. No, I would love an understudy at some point too. But I should say that, like, there's not much money. We can talk about money, right?
I was going to say, we'll get to money, but let's
Yeah.
talk journey, because I do think money will be a part of that conversation.
Yeah. I don't do it for the money, that's for sure. But nevertheless, that would be my advice to anybody that really wanted, even if you just wanted to say, you know what, I want to see if this is for me. Because and that's what I should talk about too, is the board, to sit for the boards. You know, there are a certain number of requirements. One of those requirements is you have to observe 5 medical legal autopsies. So those are cases that have nothing to do with identifying somebody or bite marks or anything. Those are just like you said, homicide rates are up, I think, pretty much everywhere in the country, sadly enough. So in your area, just say, hey, I'm a dentist. I'm in being a forensic odontologist. To sit for my boards, I have to observe 5 autopsies. Would you mind if I came in Thursday morning and got some of my observation hours under my belt? I would say more often than not, they would be happy to have you do that. So I would say start there. I think some people think, oh, it's going to be dry bones and totally skeletonized, and I can handle. It's not. It's not. A lot of it is unpleasant, to say the least. But you know, there are lots of live dental patients that are unpleasant to deal with. But
This is very true.
good anyways. But that would be my number one piece of advice. And then just try to find some good CE. You know, we're at the beginning of a year, and in the state of Kentucky, it's our renewal year for dentists. So we've got to get all our CE hours in. So if it's something people are interested in, and they're maybe a third of the way into their career or halfway into their career, and they've studied all they want to study about other things, and they're interested in forensics, there are great forensic CE courses.
And then you sit for the boards. Once you've accumulated enough knowledge and studied and participated, observed, and done all those things, there's a board requirement in order to really truly be used in that capacity, I would imagine.
Yeah. And so what takes the longest, and I thought this was going to be the limiting factor, you have to attend 4 annual meetings. And those annual meetings happen at the AAFS, which is the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. And actually, the meeting is just around the corner. If anybody is like, oh, I definitely want to pursue this, that meeting is coming up in February, and it's in Orlando. So
sounds like a profit deal.
I know. I promise you, I'm not.
4 annual meetings?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 4 annual meetings.
That's easy. Annual meetings, you go and drink with all your buddies. That doesn't sound that bad.
Right? But it still takes 4 years.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's a time thing. It's not that much of an effort, though.
Right. So that's one of them. But there is like a legit exam, like written exam. And you have to do a certain number of bite mark cases, which I thought was, it's tough to require something that's so controversial. Some states don't even allow it. So it kind of rules you out from being able to complete those requirements. So it's tough. You know, I remember in dental school, they were saying, you had to complete so many multi-canal endo cases. And it's like, well, I can't just drag people in off the street and start, doing root canals on people just to get my requirements done. So it is kind of just a waiting game. But in that time, no two cases are alike. And then if you love it, it doesn't seem as much like work.
So then diving into that,
Yeah.
number one, how do you balance that with working? Like, what's your work life look like, and how do you make this happen? Because I'm sure folks that are genuinely interested want to understand that. And two, what does the compensation structure look like for a forensic dentist?
Yeah. So the way I make it work is it worked out pretty nicely. My husband's a dentist and we practice together. And we also have an associate at the practice. So if there's ever, and these cases do come up.
So what you're saying is we might need somebody because something bad could happen in that situation.
So,
Yeah. No, good luck with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't met each other yet. So
Okay.
yeah, I take Tuesdays off and I reserve it for forensic work, whether I have a report to write or whether I want to study for my boards or prepare a presentation for a study club or something like that. But I do have to be able to be kind of on call. So for instance, if someone needed to be identified on a Wednesday, but my next day off is not until Tuesday, I generally will have either my husband or my associate take my patient care on for me so that I can be there. And the medical examiner's office is about 20 minutes away. So it's easy for me to get there pretty quickly. And they certainly appreciate that. And knowing too that there's a family waiting and a funeral waiting.
Right.
Expedites things a bit more. And then payment wise, because I know people are interested, and I've seen some people lately in some of the groups I'm in that say I'm worn out, I'm tired, I'm kind of burnt out in clinical dentistry. What else can I do? And some people will say forensic dentistry. It would be really tough to make a living doing forensic dentistry unless you lived in a huge metropolitan area that didn't have a dentist. So, for instance, Dr. Grace Chung, she has a thriving practice out in Nevada near Las Vegas, but Clark County keeps her busy as a forensic dentist. And she actually is one of my personal people, one of the people I admire the most because I know she's busy with forensics. And on top of that, she's got 4 kids and she can do anything. But certainly there are all that to say, there are some cities that do need a forensic dentist, but I can tell you the pay, this is bad. This is so bad. So the state of Kentucky or the Commonwealth of Kentucky reimburses $125 an hour. Sounds like reasonable. Probably
I think that's what hygienists are earning in New York right
I
now,
know,
actually.
Yeah.
Oh my, or at least asking for, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're not going to get rich being a forensic dentist, but I love it.
But when you're doing something that you are passionate about, though, when you get to that point where you're ready to slow down, hopefully you've made all of the accommodations for your retirement or for your slowdown. And so really, that just becomes kind of play money for hopefully for most that are doing it. And, I know for people, a lot of people in dentistry, doing something meaningful is really important. And it's kind of my passion with sleep and TMD is that there's just not a lot of other people doing it. And there's a lot of people who really need this service, much like you are saying, look, these families really are needing somebody and they don't want to wait a month for UT to identify this or rule in or rule out. So, I do think in something like this, money becomes a secondary thing. And if it's a hobby, look, I used to fly, which I can tell you $125 an hour in versus $800 an hour out, and doing something you love. good for you.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, it could be, to your point, it could be a retirement gig.
Right.
It could be moms who don't want to go back to clinical, but still want to use the skills, or dads too, who want to use the skills that they learned in dental school, but maybe full-time practice just isn't right for their family right now, but they can, probably make this work a little bit better, at least to continue to use what they've learned and then have, personal well-being and professional satisfaction, I think, so.
Jennifer,
That's a
I've got
thing.
to interrupt this broadcast to say Mr. Brian Bell, I
Yes,
think, is watching from 30,000 feet right now.
he is.
He has reported in and said he is watching from 30,000 feet. So yes, that's a first, I think. Maybe.
I think, I don't know.
Yeah.
They usually frown on live streaming on planes. So I don't know who he had to bribe for that. So.
Thanks, Bri.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so we're at about 9:25. Any parting words or anything, first steps, Mary, for somebody who is, because we're going to have a lot of people watch this after, listen to the podcast. Someone says, I am interested. This is something I'd love to look into more. First steps.
You got to find a mentor. You got to find somebody that will take you under their wing and show you the ropes, because you can't get any requirements done until you have the casework to support sitting for the boards. And it starts with the casework. Number one, make sure that the idea of it in your head and wanting to do it as an idea and seeing what's actually done. I think some people might be surprised to know that I have to do jaw resections. And as averse as I am in my clinical practice, extracting teeth and alveoloplasty and surgical things that I just straight up won't do, I do in the medical examiner's office. I'm taking a reciprocating striker saw and I'm taking the maxilla out and I'm taking the mandible out. So it's definitely not for everybody, but
wait, you didn't say there was power tools.
There are power.
She should have led with that.
You should have led with there are power tools.
There are power tools. That might turn you on.
It's going to define it for folks.
Yeah.
For me, now I'm listening. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Because I am right in your wheelhouse. I don't do those things in my practice at all. But if they are dead,
exactly,
I might be open to the idea.
Exactly. That you're not going to cause them any pain.
Nope.
They're not going to call you with post-op sensitivity or dry socket like that. Yeah. I didn't expect it either. So I kind of.
There will be a dry socket. It just won't be of any consequence.
Yeah. No treatment.
But yeah, find a mentor. They can go to the abfo.org website and see a registry of all of the board certified forensic dentists, international and in the US. And if there's one in North Carolina, tag along.
I don't know. Now I'm intrigued. I genuinely do want to know. Yeah.
And certainly if anybody ever comes to Louisville, I'll take you with me on a case.
That'd be really cool. Very cool.
Well,
now we have to have her back for the cosmetic and aesthetic stuff.
I know.
We didn't even get to talk about that. And then cosmetic dentistry on cadavers. We need to talk about that at some point. So
could you I'm thinking, because embalming, this is gonna go, we're now gonna go off the rails. I'm gonna go and give you full disclosure.
No, it's the last 3 minutes. Do whatever you want, JB.
But I feel like there is some sweet spot for you, Mary, of taking your expertise in forensic dentistry, but also your knowledge of facial aesthetics to make people look the best they've ever looked for their own funeral. And this could be a thing. Like you could do the funeral of the stars. Like I see a business model developing in my head.
I love your entrepreneurial spirit.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Mary, thank you for being on. Love to have you on again. And appreciate everything that you're doing. I know there's a lot of families out there that that have a lot of gratitude for what you've done for them, and just love what you're doing all the way around, and don't be a stranger, and we'll definitely get you back on. We'll talk about the cosmetic stuff next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, Mary. All right. Have a great night. It was good to see you, and we'll talk again soon.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye. JB, great episode. But I hate to admit it. I don't want him to hear this. I hope he's not watching, but I miss Chad a little.
Now I'm concerned because this is recorded.
Oh,
you can never unsay that.
I can never unsay that.
No.
But I do miss
I feel like it's important to at least mention, because we're just about a month away. The three of us are going to be together.
That's
in
right.
Chicago for midwinter. So if anybody in our community is going to be out that way in the lovely month of February, in the dead of winter in Chicago, and wants to hang out, they should definitely let us know. We would love to connect. And I'm just excited about being with my one bestie and his friend that I met a few years ago.
Oh, nicely done. I love it. Also recorded. Very nicely done,
so
JB.
Mad.
Anyway, Chad, regardless of what she says, she misses you too.
But do.
We are going to be together in Chicago. And I think we'll probably have a few posts up before, and maybe disclose like where we're going to be at a few strategic times, and maybe we can do some drinks with Dinks and meet up with any of you that want to meet up, hang out, have a drink, and have the dental after party, as we like to call it. So
always. Chad's buying, so we're definitely going to meet for drinks.
Yeah, that sounds great. JB, anything else you want to close us out?
No, I hope everybody has a great week. It has to get better. 2023 is going to turn a corner. If you've already had a fantastic couple of weeks, I'm jealous of you, and I wish you continued success. But for the rest of us, I think February is going to be better.
It is.
It has to be. It can't get any worse.
Cheers, everyone. Good night, JB. Mary, thank you again.
Absolutely.
And y'all have a great night and a great week. We'll talk next week. Take care. Bye. And that wraps up another podcast for Dentists in the Know. On behalf of Dr. Jennifer Bell, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and myself, remember that we've got a great profession, so let's make it a great day, Dinks.